All right, we are just about ready to get started. Just to let you guys know, I think there was about 25 here this morning, and I think everyone's got one of these. But let me just tell you, the morning group, they didn't get this until the end because I don't think we trusted them with it. Because I know this is not really like Dean does not want you reading through this while he's talking. Like that would just be very rude.
I know this is a much more mature group than this morning's is.
That's right.
And they can show that self-restraint. Yeah.
Can they? Right.
Yeah, but I don't think they could possibly be as good as the group we had this morning. Our discussion this morning, so I'll just throw down the gauntlet right now. I mean, you can try to be as good as the group was this morning, but that's a big challenge. I challenge you to be as amazing, as fantastic, as talkative, as thoughtful, as wise as that group was this morning. Do you think they can do it?
No.
Okay.
They were brilliant. No, I'm just kidding.
We may dismiss then.
Yeah. No. And you're also much better looking. So Dean's going to put on his mic, and I just want to say we're glad that you're here, and we're glad that Dean can be here to share some of the insights that he has, both from personal experience, and then through that experience, it kind of led him to do a lot of study, research, reading, talking, interviewing, and just learning all the things that happen when we go through a great loss in our life. And he's going to go through all of that, but how do we deal with it emotionally and mentally and then physically and then with other relationships we have. And if you've been through it, and I think most of us have, one way or the other, it's complicated, isn't it? And so it's good that we can have Dean here to talk us through it and help us to realize some things and kind of receive some encouragement as well. So we're glad that you're here. And then just one thing, if you're going to be here tomorrow, so there's 3 sessions starting at 9 o'clock tomorrow, but then we have a lunch. And so I'm just going to pass this around, and if you're going to be at lunch, then you can sign it. And if you're online, we're not delivering lunch, but anyway. But if you're going to be here tomorrow for lunch, you put your name down, and at least we can have an idea of how much food we need to get without getting too much, but we definitely don't want too little. But with that, pass it over to you.
Okay. Well, good evening. I am thrilled that you're here. And I want to make a commitment to you. I want to make this commitment. I want you to leave here this evening with the feeling that this was worth it. And the reason why I feel like that is your time and my time is precious. To put it bluntly, you ain't getting this back, okay? Time just rolls on. And so tonight, you have invested some time in your life when you could be doing something else and going somewhere else. You decided to come here. My commitment is for you to leave here thinking this was really worth my time. And if I can accomplish that, that is a good goal to shoot for. Now, something I want to mention to you, we are going to be talking about living with loss. It is inevitable that we're going to experience life in this world with its losses. Probably not one, probably multiple losses of different kinds, some heavier, weightier than others, but we're all going to experience life in this world. So we need to learn about it to be able to navigate it so that it doesn't define us, but actually helps us grow through it. We can grow through our grief. Now, those losses that you experience, you don't choose. They're forced on you. Sometimes life just says, here's loss. And you have to deal with it. Now, here is something I want you to be real careful about. And you do have control over this. Don't lose your sense of humor. In a broken world, when you're going to experience stressful and difficult times, we really need a sense of humor. I love being in tense situations, even in sad, gloomy type situations, if there's children present. Children have no filter between their brain and lips. And they will say stuff right at the right time. Or they'll do some quirky, silly thing that'll just cause everybody to smile and lighten up, even though it might be a real heavy atmosphere. That's why I love to have kids in these heavy, difficult life circumstances. Don't lose your sense of humor. Your sense of humor is extremely valuable in life, especially when you're going through a difficult time in your life. Now, for that reason, I always make sure that when we're experiencing these Living with Loss workshops, it's not a gloom and doom atmosphere. As a matter of fact, you're going to smile tonight. You're going to laugh tonight. This is going to be a positive experience. Now, Proverbs chapter 17 has a verse in it that says, "A merry heart does good like medicine." Boy, that is so true. And it's cheaper than medicine you get at CVS too. A merry heart does good like medicine. It's important for us to have a sense of humor. Now, I want to share with you, I'm going to start off by sharing with you something I didn't share with the group this morning. It's my favorite story. I love stories, but this is my favorite one. Now, I hope that you're not thin-skinned. I'm going to tell you about a store that opened up in Times Square. It was a husband store. Women could go there and they could get them a husband. Now, this lady decides to fly in from Iowa to go to this husband store that she's heard about online. So she goes in and she gets her instructions. You may visit this store only once in your life. There are 6 floors, and the value of the products increase as the shopper ascends the flights. The shopper may choose any item from a particular floor or may choose to go up to the next floor, but you cannot go back down except to exit the building. So the woman proceeds into the store further. And it says on the first floor, special door. Floor 1, these men have jobs. Well, she's intrigued, but she continues on to the second floor, where the sign reads, floor 2. These men have jobs and love kids. Oh, that's nice, she thinks, but I want more. So she continues, and she goes to the third floor where the sign reads, floor 3, these men have jobs, love kids, and are extremely good looking. Wow, she thinks. But she feels compelled to keep going. So she goes to floor 4, and on that floor it says, these men have jobs, love kids, are drop-dead good looking, and help with the housework. Oh, mercy me, she says. I can't hardly stand this. But she goes to the 5th floor, floor 5. These men have jobs, love kids, are drop-dead gorgeous, help with the housework, and have a strong romantic streak, and are God-fearing. She is really, really tempted on floor 5, but she goes to the 6th floor, floor 6. Has a sign that says, your visitor, 31,456,012 to this floor. There are no men on this floor. This floor exists solely to prove that women are impossible to please. Thank you for shopping at the husband store. Please, ladies, don't be thin-skinned. You know, I remember talking to a deacon in the church in Hartville, Ohio one time, and he said, you know, Dean, isn't it sad that we have become so thin-skinned about so many things? You know, we really need to lighten up. And I really do think there's a lot of wisdom in what he said. We do need to find the value in the positive things, the uplifting things, the cute things, the beautiful things, the smiles, and the laughter that we can experience in life. We need to look for that because life's not always going to be that way. But we really need to enjoy it when we have those kinds of experiences in life. Now, I've got great news for you. I didn't come here tonight to preach at you. Now, you can clap if you want to at this point. I also did not come here to talk to you. I want to talk with you. I want you to feel free to participate. I want you to feel free to not only internalize what we're going to be talking about, but I want you to feel free to ask any question, make any comment, share any anecdote, because we want you to have ownership in this experience during the weekend. So here's what we want to do. Tonight we want to talk about life, love, and loss, and we're going to step back and take a big picture kind of perspective here about life, love, and loss. Now, I think the best place to start is to talk about where life is lived. Now, we're born into this world, and now your assignment for the next couple of minutes is I want you as a group to give me at least 5. 5 words or phrases that you would use to describe the world that we live in. Remember, we're going to be talking about life, love, and loss. I think the best place to begin is thinking about the world that we live in. What kind of a world is it? What word or phrase would you use to describe the world? Now, let me get you started. If you need a nudge, well, let me see. Maybe you're better than the group this morning. Let's see. I had to give them a little nudge this morning. Can somebody get it started? Give me a word or a phrase that you would use to describe the world that we experience life in. Okay, a gift. It's a gift from God. Boy, that is so true. It is a gift. Now, what have we done with the gift? Maybe that's a topic for another workshop. But this world that we're living in is a gift from God. Okay, what else is it? What word or phrase would you use to describe the world we live in? Yes, sir. Okay, it's a needy world. Okay, there are people who need physical things. We're so blessed in our country. We're just way beyond blessed. There are so many people in other places in the world, and even some places in our country, where people are in need of physical things, things that we take for granted. Now, we thank God for generically, but we often take the many, many blessings we have for granted. Give me another word or phrase. Yes, ma'am.
The negative side, impersonal.
Okay, impersonal. Now, if you're as, you know there was a movie, Grumpy Old Men? Okay, now, I'm telling you what, this technology stuff, I've grown to become more and more concerned about how impersonal. Let me give you an example of the impersonal world we live in. How many times, and probably here, especially in the last year or so, have you gone into a retail store of some sort and there were hardly, maybe not even any, personal cashiers to check you out? You know, I went into a Dollar Tree one time that had no individuals who were cashiers at a cash register. You had to check yourself out, even out of a Dollar Tree store. You stop and think about how impersonal sometimes these things are. I'm not one, I don't love these meetings that you have like on FaceTime. What do you call them? Zoom meetings. I hated those, but you know, sometimes because of like the virus issue we had, you know, we were kind of forced in that regard to have Zoom meetings. That's pretty impersonal. You may see the person, but there's no replacement for being in the presence of somebody else and having a conversation with them. Seeing their body language, their whole body language, and being in their presence, where maybe even you could touch their forearm or maybe pat them on the back. Yeah. It's an impersonal world. Something else. Somebody else? Go ahead. Challenging. Challenging but yet rewarding. There's balance. Challenging but yet rewarding. Somebody else? Yes, ma'am. Evil. Does that scare you? You know, there are some verses in the Bible that I really call them scary verses. Now, let me give you a sample. 1 John 5:19. The whole world lies under the sway of the wicked one. That's what the Bible says. The whole world lies under the sway of the wicked one. 1 John 5:19. That's a scary verse. Let me give you another one. 1 Peter 5:8. There's a reason why we're told, be sober, be vigilant. Your adversary, the devil, like a roaring lion, walks about seeking whom he may devour. It's a broken world spiritually, a broken world morally. There is so much evil in our world. Now, there is a tremendous amount of good, but let's recognize also the existence of evil. Can you give me another word or phrase you'd use to describe the world we live in? Go ahead. Chaotic. Boy, isn't that the truth? Yeah. I mean, watch some news. You know, look at your Facebook feed. And some of the things that are happening, the words, the communication sometimes is an obvious indication of chaos. Then you've got these physical things and the physical interaction and the chaos that can be created in our world. Now, let me give you a couple of verses. You give me a couple characteristics out of this verse. This is James 4, verses 13 and 14. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell and make a profit, whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? It is a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. What's that say about the world we live in? It's temporary, okay? Your life is a vapor that appears for a little time and then what happens? It vanishes away. By the way, have you ever stopped to think about how many kids, when they read that verse, have no clue? They've never seen a teapot with vapor rising out of it, because how do we heat our water? In a microwave. You know, here's a good kind of object lesson for your children and grandchildren. Take them to the stove where you put some water on. Let them see that vapor and then read that verse so that they'll understand what's being said there. But the point is, life here is temporary. We have a beginning here and we have an end here. You know, one of the things that I have reminded myself about a lot here just in the last couple of years, every once in a while, I remind myself to calm myself down. Everything's temporary. Because sometimes, you know, when we get in a difficult phase in our life or a different and difficult season in our life, it can become so disappointing and so discouraging because this keeps going on and on and on, and we feel like it's never ending. No, there's going to be an end. You just don't know when. Well, yeah, it's temporary. What else is in that passage? You do not know what will happen tomorrow. What's that indicate about this life? Okay, it's very unpredictable, isn't it? You do not know what will happen tomorrow. Okay, now that is the reality. Now, in this ministry, I've had the privilege of being in 23 states. I've seen some amazing things in the world God has made. It's a beautiful world. It is a beautiful world. As a matter of fact, back in the 1940s, there was a movie, and George Bailey was the main character. And does anybody remember the name of the movie? It's a Wonderful Life. Now, remember in that movie, he had this, what I call a come to Jesus kind of experience, a wake-up call during the course of the plot of that movie. But he was becoming very stressed and life was becoming very difficult. And then he had this opportunity to see the big picture of his life and how that he had had a lot of powerful, positive influence in a lot of people's lives. And though he was going through a stressful time, he was reminded in that plot as it went along in that movie that it's a wonderful life. But there are occasions when it's not. And it's a wonderful life until it's not. And in this life, we have a lot of wonderful times. But then there are times that are not wonderful, that are very, very difficult. Now, I'm going to show you a picture. And I want you to look at this picture, and I want you to tell me what this picture communicates to you, because everything your eyes see sends a message to your brain. The things that you hear sends a message to your brain. Even the things you smell. I hate the smell of liver and onions. When I was growing up as a kid, I'll tell you, that is the only, if mom made something I didn't like, if I quit breathing through my nose, I could eat anything except liver and onions. Oh, the gross smell. If I go into a restaurant where they have liver and onions on some kind of buffet, that sends a message to me, and it reminds me of a bad time in my life as a kid when mom did that at home. Smells, sights, sometimes touches. There's all kinds of things that send messages to your brain. Okay, now you see an image on the screen. What message does it send to your brain? Blessings are heavier than burdens. Blessings outweigh the burdens, okay? Now, there can be a difference between reality and our perspective. You know, you've heard people say that reality is perspective. And I understand what people mean by that. And there's a sense in which I think it'd be good for us to look at life that way. However, I want to read a passage of Scripture from the book of Job. And you are probably well aware that Job lived a very unique life. Now, when you think of Job, you don't typically think of blessings. What do you think about? Burdens. Now, name me some burdens he bore in his life, some losses that he experienced in his life. Okay, he lost his kids. Has anybody here lost a child of any age? Okay, that is when you go through that experience. I've never experienced that, but I've talked to so many people. That is such an abnormal and unnatural thing to experience in your life. They're supposed to bury us, not the other way around. That is just such a unnatural, horrific loss. And for some people, that can be the worst loss they ever experience in life, because you just don't expect that to happen. It seems so unfair to have something like that happen. And so he didn't just lose a child, though. Do you remember how many? 10. 7 sons and 3 daughters. That means every single one of his kids, he lost them. So he didn't lose a child. He lost every single one of those children. Now, do you think that's going to be a hardship? Do you think he's going to be thinking normal? Do you think he's going to be feeling normal? Now, give me something else that he lost besides 10 children if that wasn't enough. Okay, he lost his health. Sore boils from the sole of his foot to the top of his head. He was so bad off that when friends came to see him in Job chapter 2, from a distance, they didn't even recognize the man. That's how bad he was disfigured by his sores that he had. He lost his health. So he loses all 10 of his children. He loses his health. What else did he lose? Stuff. He was a super prosperous person. He had camels and oxen. And have you ever stopped to think about how smart Job and Mrs. Job were? If you're going to have all those critters, you know, there's feeding time when you got critters. Well, 10 children is a good beginning to a workforce. They were very sharp. They knew what they were doing. But he loses all of his prosperity. So from great prosperity to severe adversity, and he suffered all these losses. Now, Job chapter 14, verse 1. Man who is born of woman. Now, do you know of any other way to get born? I don't know. Have you been living the last 2 or 3 years and listening to people? I mean, come on. But Job was right. Man is born of woman. He said, man who is born of woman is a few days. Now, what do you think about that one? He said, man that's born of woman is a few days. Is that true or false? Okay, how could you defend Job? If, let's say, now, by the way, I know, let me look around. Okay, I'm sure I can say this now. I know somebody in this room who's 91 years old. As a matter of fact, he received a prize. Sam? Is that right? First name?
You tell me.
I'm trying to remember from this morning, okay? Cut me some slack. I'm old enough to begin to lose functional brain cells. 91 years old, okay? By the way, out at night, yeah. Lord, make me a Sam. Boy, that's fantastic. Now, do you think somebody who reaches 90 deserves a birthday party? And what if a person gets to 100? I saw a movie just a few days ago. And by the way, you women, I don't know if you men could handle this movie or not, but I'm going to put in a plug for a movie. It's what some people would call a low-budget movie, but those are the kind I like. It's called The Christmas Ring. And in the course of that movie, there was a special recognition of veterans, which I loved that part of the movie. And there was a guy who did a cameo experience in there, and he was 102 years old, and he was dressed in his military uniform, 102 years old. Now, do you think somebody who hits 90 or 100 deserves a birthday party? Okay, why do we make that a big deal? Because what do we say about their life? They've had what kind of a life? A long life. Okay, Job said, man that's born of woman is a few days. But here we are celebrating a long life. Now, let me take you back to 2 years after my wife died. My wife died on Christmas morning of 2013 at 9:40 in the morning. And we'd been married for 41 years. We got married when we were 19 years old. I was a mess, and that goes with the journey. So for a little over 2 years, I fasted from all music. I couldn't handle, there's a lot of music has romantic overtones, and there was no way. I have a very, at some point in time, I need to explain to you, I'm a messed up male. I have some characteristics that are just not typical of males. It's because I lived with 4 females in the same house, 3 daughters and a wife, and you can't come out of that normal, okay? So I'm not a normal male. So I can struggle sometimes with things that could cause me to be emotional. And when I would listen to music, and so much of the music has romantic overtones, I said, none of this, I can't handle this. So it was during that period of time, I got hooked on, when I was in the car, listening to AM talk radio. Well, one day I was in Jackson, Tennessee. This guy was teaching or preaching. He had bought some time on the radio, and I don't know what his name was. I don't know what religious group he was affiliated with, but he made this comment in the course of this study he was doing. He said, wisdom is when you see something the way God sees it. I thought, wow, I had never thought about that before. That is so true. True wisdom is when you see something the way God sees it. And it's hard sometimes for us mere moral, limited human beings to see something the way God sees it. I mean, that can really be hard for us to do. Well, if you have God's perspective about human relationships, then you have wisdom about relationships. If you see the church as God sees the church, you have wisdom about the church. When you have wisdom about time, that's when you see it the way God does. Well, how does God see time? The prophet Isaiah said, he inhabits eternity. I think it's in Psalm 55. I need to check that. He inhabits eternity. He's an eternal being. There was no beginning with him. There's not going to be any ending with him. He's like a constant video, always running. Now, in regard to time, it'd be really good for all of us to think about time from God's perspective. Think about it eternally. So if you get to 91 or 100 plus, how long is that compared to eternity? The proverbial drop in the bucket. It's just a blink of an eye. But we need to be reminded of that. Things here in this world are temporary. What we need to focus on and what we need to give our biggest emphasis to and what we need to be most invested in is things that are spiritual, the things that are unseen, the things that are eternal. It is just a few days, no matter how long we live. Job was right. Man is born of woman a few days. Now, he said something else. Man that's born of woman is a few days, and it says, the last 3 words in the verse, full of trouble. Okay, now, here's what I want you to think about. Full of trouble. Was Job's life full of trouble? Now, he had a lot of troubles. You know, we talked about all those losses. And imagine the compounding of all of those losses and the effect that would have on him. I mean, he's not on a struggle bus here. I mean, he is way off the rail. He hit a guardrail, and he rolled down the mountain, and the bus hit the tree and went up in flames. I mean, he's a wreck. Now, what kind of man was Job? Well, he hated evil. He turned away from evil. He was blameless. He was deeply devoted to God and to his family. He was not the average Job. He was exceptional in many ways. But yet, look at what these troubles did to him. They caused him to see his life as full of trouble. Now, here's your challenge. Name me a blessing. He had more than one. But name me a blessing, because there's more than one. Name me a blessing Job had after having suffered all those losses. Okay, God is still with him. Okay, now, let me ask you this question. Is he still alive? Okay, now there's a blessing, right? Don't we thank God for life? And don't we often fight for life? You know, we fight for the life of even the unborn, and rightfully so. Life's a blessing. And in that life, that is a blessing, he had God. Who was watching over him, and who was sovereign and restricting Satan as Satan begins to attack him in rapid fire succession? Remember, Satan said, God, if you mess with him, he's not going to serve you no more. Man don't serve God for nothing. And God said, I'm not going to mess with him. If you want to mess with him, you go right ahead, but don't you dare touch him. And that's when he started being stripped of these blessings. But you see, God was limiting Satan. And then Satan's not satisfied because Job passes the test. Satan says, if you touch him, God, you touch him, you mess with him, and he'll not serve you anymore. And God said, I'm not messing with him. Now, if you want to touch him, you go right ahead, but don't you dare take his life. And that's when he loses his health. But he passes another test. God's in control of that situation. God is limiting Satan and Satan's attack. God is watching over and caring for Job. In Romans 15, in verse 13, the Bible says, God is a God of hope. If you have God, are you ever without hope? If God is the only thing that you have, I mean literally the only thing you have, you are richly blessed. To think that you have Almighty God, the creator and sustainer of the world, the one in whose image you are privileged to live in and after his likeness. You have him in your life. Blessings don't get any bigger than that. Don't get any more priceless than that. He had God in his life. He had life. Did he have any other blessings? What was his marital status? If he would have went to the doctor and had to press the screen, and by the way, I went to an eye doctor recently, and whenever that particular screen came up in regard to my marital status, there were 11 options on the screen. No kidding. I've got a picture of it on my phone. Now, if he's going to the doctor and he checks his marital status, what's his marital status? He's married. Is that a blessing? Fellas, shake your head like this real strongly. Yeah. Prove to her. Prove to all the other women. Yes. And do you know what some of us would give to have that blessing back? Sunday morning, if the Lord permits, the married people who come into this room are not going to leave without a wake-up call. I have the intention of reminding them of how richly blessed they are. Marriage is a blessing that is so easy to take for granted. I know because I did. It's really sad sometimes, us human beings, we don't really fully appreciate like we should something until we lose it. Job was blessed. He had a wife to share those burdens with. He had life. He had God. But yet he felt so bad. The impact of all that he was experiencing was so strong on him, he said, full of trouble. Now, if your bottle of water is full of trouble, if I go into a restroom and I fill this all the way up to the brim, what else can I put in there? If it's full, it's full. Now, what happens whenever we get to struggling, or if we experience a high in our life? How does that affect us? Well, typically, we become more emotional than normal. We'll even talk different. Watch this, notice this. When somebody is experiencing a high or a low, it's very normal and natural for us human beings to talk and act different because of the effect of what we're experiencing, either the inflated effect of the blessing or the harsh experience of the weight of the burden can cause us to feel and act and even talk differently. Now, take, for instance, the woman who is getting upset with her husband because he's not taking out the trash. And so women sometimes will do everything they can to try to help communicate to their husband. But finally, what she does is she takes the trash can and she sticks it right in the middle of the kitchen. I mean, right in the middle, hoping he'll get the hint. Because one of his chores is to take the trash out. Well, it gets to the point where a couple of days later, she loses it, and she begins to really rake on him. You never take out the trash anymore. Why are you not taking out the trash? You just never take out the trash. And then what he does is, you know what? He pulls out his phone, and he said, now, wait a minute, honey. On my phone, I took a video 3 months ago where I was actually taking the trash out. You said I never take the trash out. Why did she say never? She was very emotional. When we say very emotional things, a lot of times it's because that we're very emotional. And we have extreme ways of expressing ourselves. Well, the fact is, Job was struggling. Even as great a man as he was, it was having an effect on him. And he lost sight of the fact that he had a whole lot of blessings. Now, you know, this bottle of water I have, let's say, okay, right here is about where it's at right now. So what would we say about the bottle if the bottle is filled with water up to about this point? What would we say about the bottle? Okay, it's half what? Half full. Or half empty. Well, eventually later, I'm going to empty it, okay? Okay, half full or half empty. Now, there's a third alternative. The bottle's too big. What is in here? What's in the bottle besides water? Air. So it's full. It has both water and air. Your life has many, many blessings. But your life, on occasion, maybe even now, has something else in it besides blessings, and that's burdens. Some of those burdens may not be a big deal. I mean, maybe you have a cold, and it's eventually going to end. Or you may be just having, you know, a bad day. Maybe you're a moody, you have a personality that has mood swings. But there are going to be times when you're going to feel the presence of those burdens. And you're not going to be normal because of the influence of those burdens. The realization that we need to have is we're always more blessed than we're burdened. We just don't always feel that way. We're always. Now, there's never an exception, and I'm very hesitant about when you use universal terms, they come back to bite you typically, okay? But there are a few times I will use universal terms. Here's one I'll use. You are always more blessed than you're burdened. You may not feel like it, but here is something you need to remember. Your feeler doesn't care about facts. Your feeler doesn't care about facts. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about, in the morning, the very first morning session, about what grief does to us. And one of the things that we need to realize when we're on a grief journey is we've got a thinker and a feeler. Both of them are impacted. And boy, sometimes that feeler can be so strong, you ain't thinking straight. You're just not thinking clearly. The fact is, we're always more blessed than we're burdened. During the 8 years that my wife was afflicted with Parkinson's disease, She lost many blessings, and I watched her lose those blessings. And only in that 8+ years of caregiving, in that journey, did I realize what an ingrate that I was and didn't realize it, because I'd never thought specifically enough about how blessed that I was. Tomorrow, and if the Lord permits, Sunday as well, we'll talk about many of those blessings that she lost. Well, one thing that we do that's really good for us is when we get together and we do church, we will sing this song. Now, what I want you to do after us just thinking out loud together about a lot of those things that we just talked about, I want you to stop and watch the words of this song. When upon life's billows you are tempest tossed. That's inevitable. It's going to happen. Everybody is going to suffer difficulties and trials in life. When you are discouraged, now see, that indicates the impact of the billows. When upon life's billows you are tempest tossed. When you are discouraged, thinking all is lost. Now there's a difference between losing all and thinking you've lost all. Count your many blessings. And notice the suggestion, name them one by one. The key to being thankful is thinking, but it's the kind of thinking that is specific, not generic. We'll talk more about that. It'll surprise you what the Lord has done. Then the question's raised in this song, are you ever burdened with a load of care? Well, duh. Yes, it's going to happen. Does the cross seem heavy you are called to bear? Yes, sometimes it's very hard. Life is very hard. Again, count your many blessings. Why? Because that will have an effect on how you think. It's going to lessen the doubts that you feel in your life because of the storm that you're dealing with in your life. And then again, the reminder, it's going to be a blessing if you count your blessings. When you look at others with their lands and you look at how life seems so unfair. Bad people prospering. Here you're a good person and you're struggling. That just doesn't seem fair. But God didn't promise fair. Think that Christ has promised you his wealth untold. Whenever my wife passed away at her memorial service, I had a young man sing a song. It's my favorite song. As a matter of fact, I told my kids, I have 3 daughters, all 3 faithful members of the Lord's church. And I explained to them that when I die, I wanted the church, well, there's probably only going to be 8 or 10 there. But anyway, I wanted them to sing this song, this favorite song of mine. And then after that, I heard some churches sing the song. And I decided, no, I went back to them. I said, just have somebody read the verses of that song. Because some churches have a hard time singing the song. It relates to this very thing that we're looking at here. Think that Christ has promised you his wealth untold. Here's the song. I wonder if the church here sings this song. Often I'm hindered on my way, burden so heavy I almost fall. Then I hear Jesus sweetly say, heaven will surely be worth it all. Heaven will surely be worth it all, worth all the trials that here befall. After this life, with all of its strife, heaven will surely be worth it all. The reason why I remember that lyric and the reason why I memorized that lyric is because I need to keep telling myself that. When you're heartbroken and when you're struggling and when you're feeling the pressure and the burdens of life, we need to remember promised by Jesus is a wealth untold, and it's called heaven. Heaven will surely be worth it all. And in that song, as you continue, again, you're reminded, count your many blessings money cannot buy. Our focus as Christians needs to be on the spiritual, on the unseen, on the eternal. While we're living in a broken world where we have to deal with physical things, that is difficult, especially when you're hurting so bad. The reward is in heaven, no matter how long it takes us to get there. So amid the conflict, whether great or small, do not be discouraged. God is over all. Count your many blessings. Angels will attend, help and comfort give you to your journey's end. Would you sing with me just the chorus? Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done. Okay, now there's a problem with blessings. I hate to ruin this. We are richly blessed, but now there is a problem with blessings. Now, here's the problem. What happens with these blessings is we become attached to them. Okay, this is problematic when this happens. Because you're never going to get to keep your blessings as long as you'd like. In a temporary world where everything's temporary, you're not going to get to keep your blessings as long as you'd like. And when you become attached to people or things, and you lose something you become very attached to, I use the word love in that sense, in that very generic sense, like a lot of people do. I love football. I love the Ohio State University. I mean, I was born in Columbus. I know I'm near the big house. And I know a couple weeks it's going to be a big deal. But the fact is, I love the scarlet and gray. I've been that way since I was born in Columbus, Ohio. Well, we become attached to things, don't we? Time and experience causes us to become attached to people and to things. By the way, does anybody know the name of the boy whose tongue is stuck to the pole? Do not pick up your phone and Google this. Does anybody remember the name of the boy whose tongue is stuck to the pole? Now, you remember the name of the movie, right?
Is it Fritz?
No. Ralphie? No, that's the other boy. Does anybody know? Okay, I'll ask you another question. Does anybody know where this movie was filmed? Who said that? Ohio. You will be blessed with a special life experience that is so cool, you will want, if you're on Facebook, to put this on Facebook. The Widowhood Workshop Ministry is my family's passion project. We have a golden chest of prizes. And what we like to do when I'm on the road and I travel by car, the TSA won't let me take this on a flight. What my family loves to do is reward people who have totally insignificant knowledge. Okay? Okay? So, because you knew, by the way, it was Cleveland, Ohio. By the way, this particular scene, you can go to YouTube and you can plug in Triple Dog Dare scene, and you'll get to watch this without watching the whole movie. I just think it's really cool watching this. It's really funny about how the kids and the teacher act.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Is it Flip?
Is it what?
Flip?
Close enough. I'll let you dig into the golden chest of prizes too. Flick. It is Flick. Yeah, Flick. Now this particular scene, now the movie was basically filmed in Cleveland, Ohio. You can go to the house.
Didn't they just sell the house?
Yes, not too long ago, maybe a year or so ago. Yeah. Now this particular scene though was filmed in Ottawa, Canada. I guess the day that was scheduled to be filmed, there wasn't any snow in Cleveland, and so they went to Ottawa, Canada. I did not know that till recently doing some research. But anyway, both of you, after the session is over, get to pick from the golden chest of prizes, and you wouldn't believe how many cool stuff is in here. Okay. Can you be patient? Okay. Can you be patient? Okay. 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 Do you think he intended to get his tongue stuck to the pole? Okay. Now, the other boys did. I mean, this is bullying back then, okay? So, there are times in life we become unintentionally attached to things. And then there are things that we become intentionally attached to. Like, for instance, I was walking this morning. I'm a walker. My goal every year is to walk at least 1,000 miles. And I think this year, Lord willing, I'll hit about 1,300. I was out walking this morning way before the first session, and I saw this Camaro SS. black with a white streak down the middle, parked in this business area, and I took a couple of pictures of it. I could become really easily, quickly attached to that car. It was really cool. I haven't sent that picture to somebody, but I have an intention of sending that picture to a few people. Really cool car. You know, a guy can become very attached to a car. I used to have a 2012 Nissan Versa, white hatchback, and I called it Olaf. Olaf. I give names to the cars I most liked in my life. I gave names to Olaf. Now, right now, I'm driving Oscar, okay? Oscar is bigger and roomier than Olaf. But Olaf, the snowman, remember in the movie? Okay. So we become attached to people and to things, either intentionally or unintentionally. Now, do any of you have a dog? Okay, this is a confessional room now, okay? Okay, you've admitted you have a dog. Does your dog have a name? Okay, it's a dog, and you gave it a name. Okay, now, can you imagine somebody having a dog die and then burying it in a pet cemetery? Can you imagine that? I've seen pet cemeteries. You know, in the journeys I've done, one of the most distinctive one was in Wiley, Texas, north of Dallas. I'll tell you, there are gas and oil people in the Dallas, Texas area. They have way more money than they have sense. You should have seen this cemetery. I thought rich people were buried there. It was their dogs and their cats. I was in Goshen, Indiana, which is up near the Michigan-Indiana border. There's a pet cemetery there. Why would people do that? They become very attached to this P-E-T. Now, it came into the house as a pet, but what does it morph into? Family member. You become attached. How do you become attached? Time and experience creates the attachment. Are any of you, do you remember way back for a number of years, Bill Cosby had that family show? Really good, healthy. The very first episode was about the death of the family fish. And if you remember that episode, they had a memorial service over the toilet before they flushed the fish down the toilet. That is so close to reality because we can become attached to things intentionally or unintentionally, and it can be hard experiencing the separation, the loss of those things. Now, let me tell you about intentional attachment. I did not grow up in the church. My dad, and I didn't know this till I was about 14 years old, but when my dad left high school, he graduated from high school, he left home, he left his family, and he left the church. So the first 14 years or so of my life, I'd never read the Bible. I wasn't a church-going kid. If you would have asked me, who's Noah? I would have said, that's my uncle. He lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's how ignorant I was. I was totally ignorant in regard to biblical things. Had never, ever read the Bible. So Dad decides that he's going to come back to the Lord and come back to the church. And so thankful that he did. That had to be providential. So when I started going to church, I went out of respect to my father because he was my father. I didn't want to cause him any more agony than my older brother had already caused in my mom and dad's life. So I went to church. Well, it got real easy going to church. And it wasn't because I loved the Lord. It was because there was a 15-year-old girl there. And I became intentionally attached to that girl. So much so that about 5 years later, we got married at age 19, both of us at age 19. It was an intentional attachment. See, we have unintentional attachments and we have intentional attachments. Now, either one of those, when we lose them, it will have an effect on us. Some degree of grief. The stronger the attachment, the deeper the grief, the greater the struggle. Okay, now, I want you to name me something. Now, don't think about people. Name me something that somebody could lose that could really shake them up. Their what? Their wallet, okay. Yeah, that would definitely shake some people up. the raise of the blood pressure, their heart rate. Frantically, they'll start looking for it because it mattered to them. They were attached to it, okay? Give me something else that you might lose that would shake you up. Yes, sir? Your job. Let me tell you about Clyde. Clyde was a high-level accountant, and boy, this is something that's become all too common now with our struggles in recent years. Clyde was a high-ranking accountant for the Firestone Tire and Rubber Company in Akron, Ohio. I preached in Hartville, Ohio for 33 years. That's 15 miles outside of Akron. Clyde was a member of the church. And this guy was so dedicated to his job that he would go in on Saturday when he didn't have to because he was that conscientious as an employee. 39 years of service, they walk in one day and they say, Clyde, we're going to move your job down to Nashville. Bridgestone, the Japanese, had bought Firestone. They're going to move the American headquarters down to Nashville. Clyde says, I don't want to go to Nashville. They said, we don't want you to go to Nashville either. Take a hike. He didn't retire. He was retired. Now, how do you think that made him feel when he was so attached to that job? Give me an emotion you think he experienced. Angry. Angry. So much so that because they ill-prepared their plan to get rid of him, a few months later, they came back to him. You know, they've cut him off, but now they're coming back to him because they've left a mess. Clyde, we'd like to have you come back and help us out for a few months. What do you think he said? No way, Jose. He was mad as a hornet. Now, my daughter works for Bridgestone in Nashville. She's an accountant, a high-level accountant there. She knew about all this going on. And she told me part of the story. Now, Clyde tells me this part. They came back to him a second time. Things were still so messed up. My daughter said, Dad, you wouldn't believe this. It's such a mess down there. They went back to Clyde and said, Clyde, and Clyde told me this one Sunday. They came back to me, Dean, and they said, what will it take to have you come back and help us out for a while? And Clyde said, Dean, I named a number I knew they would not match. And guess what they did? They matched it, and boy, was he smiling. Really big. He was smiling. He got back his pride. He'd lost his pride. It was an injury to his self-esteem. Isn't it amazing how that things over the course of time can become so important to us that we permit them to become our identity even? Well, I'm going to stop for the sake of time. Let me just mention a few things. What about when a person gets a cancer diagnosis? What have they lost? Their health. And probably scared to death and feel like they're hopeless, like they've lost their hope. What about when a person has diabetes and they have to have a part of their body removed? What do we call that? An amputation. Do you think they're going to grieve that? Okay. What about a person who experiences divorce? What have they lost? We need to be more aware and more sensitive to the impact of divorce in people's lives. I could introduce you to a gal who at age 22, after she finished college, got married to a Christian man that she met at a Christian college. 7 years later, one morning she goes to work and he's in the shower. And she comes home that day and everything of his is gone. Like he's never, ever been in that house. Except for his wedding ring on the dining room table. He ended up divorcing her, and she didn't want the divorce. We need to be real careful not to jump to the conclusion that everybody who's experienced divorce and has that in their story desired it, chose it, or contributed to it. Divorce creates grief. What about a young lady on a college campus and she's raped? And she's lost her virginity in that violent experience. Do you think she's going to grieve? Let's flip the coin. Here's a young lady that grew up in the church, and without question, she loves the Lord dearly. But she's a human in the heat of passion. She gifts her virginity to her boyfriend. Do you think she's going to grieve? The reason why I mention those things and encourage you to participate is because now you see loss from the bigger picture. You see grief from the bigger picture. Anytime we experience the loss of something that is significant to us, whether it's a monetary loss or a sentimental loss or a spiritual loss, it's going to have an effect on us. And that's grief. And tomorrow morning, that first session is going to be what grief does to us. What is the impact of that in our life? But it's going to cause us to really struggle. Job struggled mightily. He was an amazing man, but the impact of what he experienced was powerful. Let's not be naive about ourselves, about the other people in our lives. You may be a great person. I hope all of us are striving to be men and women of God. But the key word there might be men or women. Even though we may be deeply devoted to God, and we may have a powerful faith, when we experience loss of something significant in our life, it's going to have an impact in our life. Anybody here ever lose their house? Just last night, I have a daughter who lives in Gainesville, Florida. She's a doctor at physical therapy, and she sent me a video last night of the house next door to theirs on fire. That was scary to see that. And I know where that house is. I know the proximity of that house to my daughter's house. You know, you can lose a house by fire, by flood. There's all kinds of reasons you could lose a house. Do you think that's going to matter to you? Are you going to grieve? As a matter of fact, what in that house is irreplaceable? If your house burns down or a tornado comes in and blows it away, what in that house is irreplaceable? Pictures. Pictures. Now, have you ever stopped to think those pictures, that we're talking about, those hardcover pictures, do you know what they are? Well, yeah, they're like, a manila folder kind of thickness. That's what it is. Now, what makes that hard copy picture so valuable? That paper, what makes it valuable? Memories. What are the memories about? Family, friends, maybe places you've been. I'm going to give you something that could be very helpful the rest of your life. I hope it is. I'm going to give you life in 3 words. Now, you think about that. You think about how huge that is, life. Okay, I'm going to reduce life to 3 words. Here they are on this shirt. People, relationships, and experiences. That's what life is. People, relationships, and experiences. Now, if you say something often enough in the presence of your children or grandchildren, you might get a t-shirt like this for Christmas with what you say on the shirt. That's where this came from. It was a gift from my children. Life is people, relationships, and experiences. In that house that has a limited monetary value, that Zillow overinflates, by the way, when you check on it, way beyond the monetary value is the sentimental value. Because in that house, that's where life was experienced with other people, and you had experiences that cultivated relationships. That's what makes that house irreplaceable. Now, you can sell it and go somewhere else, or you could have it burned and go somewhere else, but that other house is not like that house. So see how things become very much attached to us? and we become very attached to things. Now, whenever we suffer loss, it's going to have an effect on us. People who are grieving don't look like they typically look. They're not happy, cheery anymore. You can tell when a person's happy, when they have a positive perspective. You know, our demeanor is to some degree affected by what we are experiencing in our life. And so you're going to struggle. We're going to talk about that struggle, but it's going to affect how you appear. Grief changes a lot of things, and one thing it does is it changes your appearance. It changes how you present yourself and how you carry yourself until it doesn't. Well, I'm going to end the session tonight with this very valuable gift to you. I'm going to reduce a book of about 200 pages to 2 slides. Here's the first one. There's a guy named William Bridges who is world-renowned. He travels the world, and he helps businesses and organizations navigate transitions. He wrote a book called, one word, Transitions. The subtitle to the book is Making Sense of Life's Changes. Transitions. Now, here's the book in 2 slides. He explains that we live in a world of change. Some of the changes we experience are chosen. The church here chose to offer me the opportunity to come here. I chose to accept the opportunity to come here. Chosen. Some of you may have moved from somewhere else and you chose to live right here. I didn't choose to be born in Columbus, Ohio. But that was a change from being in that safe environment in the womb to a broken world. We have changes that are chosen, and then there are changes that are forced on us. Loss is something forced on you. We don't say, Lord, give me loss. We don't pray for loss. We don't want loss. For good reason. We know about how that's going to hurt and the struggle it's going to cause in our life. So you have chosen changes, and then you have forced changes. Now, either way, a change is a change. And what he explains in the book is change means a new beginning. Now, here is the turning point of the book, though. What you've got to realize is in between the change and the new beginning, there's something that he identifies, here's the second slide, as the neutral zone. The neutral zone is the period in your life between the change and the new beginning. It is your time of adjustment. Your life is not going to be normal. You are going to be fluid, and you're going to be adjusting, whether you've chosen or it's been forced on you. You're going to be adjusting. Now, when a person says, I do, and the officiant signs the paperwork, you go from being single to being married. But, you've got so much to learn. There's so much adjustment. It is a new beginning, but there's a lot. You've got to cut yourself and your new bride or your new groom. You've got to cut them slack because you're adjusting. Let me tell you about a fatal mistake my wife made at age 19. We got married in New Philadelphia, Ohio. That's about 20 miles south of Canton, Ohio. And a couple hours after the marriage, we hit the road and we were headed back to Henderson, Tennessee, where I was a student at what is now Freed-Hardeman University. I'd finished my freshman year in college, and we were going back for my sophomore year. It must have been maybe a month or 2 after we got married. My wife went to the pantry in that $75 a month place we lived in, and she got Campbell's pork and beans out. She opened the pork and beans, and she poured them right out of the can into the bowl. And she had the audacity to take that bowl and put it on the table where we were going to eat. I couldn't believe it. My mother never did that. You heat those things in a pot on the stove before you put them in the bowl and expect me to eat them. See, there's some transitions, some changes you have to get used to when you go from single to married. Well, with any change, you've got to realize that you've got to be flexible, and things are just not going to be normal. It's a period of adjustment. Now, whenever you've suffered loss, it's very significant, this neutral zone. Now, here's the way I depict it for you. What's between the change and the new beginning is a forest. Let me describe the forest. This is like you've been blindfolded, parachuted, and you've been dropped down into a forest. You take the folders from your eyes, and you're told, now you get out of the forest. Now, in this forest, there's no pathway and there's no footprints. Because that'd be an easy way of getting out, right? Eventually, you follow one of those, you're going to get out. But there are no footprints, there is no pathway, but there are people. It's weird, okay? Now, during this time in your life, you're going to have to make your way through this adjustment period. And you can't follow somebody else's path. It's your job, it's your assignment, it's your life, it's your loss, it's your struggle. There's going to be a lot of trial and error, a lot more error than success. Now, during this period in your life, if you've suffered great loss, you're going to have people. You're going to have people who are going to neglect you. It's just what we human beings do. Even though I don't know any of you, haven't we all been neglectful? Haven't we all dropped the ball? I feel like I need to go to every widowed male and female that I knew prior to the death of my wife and apologize to them for not being more sympathetic, understanding, and a better brother to them. I had no idea what they were going through. It wasn't because I intentionally neglected them. I was so ignorant and inexperienced. But now I know. Now I see things differently. You're going to have people who are going to neglect you. You're also going to have people who are going to be hurtful. Now, not intentionally, but they're going to say or maybe do things that are going to be hurtful. Now, if you're a Googler, Google this phrase sometime. Dumb things caring people say. Yes, there are dumb things caring people say. Now, when you Google that and that comes up on your screen, now brace yourself, because probably you've said some of those things on that list. I used to say some of those things on that list. It's not because we don't care. You know, we have a tendency as human beings, if we know of somebody that we think highly of, and we've heard them say something in a certain situation, we'll say the same thing because we value them. We think highly of them. And we think, well, if they said it in this situation, then I should say it. No, don't use that standard, especially when it comes to ministering to people who are grieving. Don't use that standard. There are some canned things that people say that are really not helpful at all. Tomorrow, I'll share with you some brutal things that people can say that can be very hurtful. Now, you're going to struggle because you're trying to find your way. Some people are going to be helpful to you, though. You're going to really appreciate them. There are going to be some people, probably because of their experience, there are going to be some people who can relate to you, and they're going to be helpful to you. So you're going to have people in your life, but you're going to have to find your own way. Eventually, you can get to a new beginning if you keep working at it. Now, if you just quit trying to get out of the forest, you're going to stay there. But if you want to get to a new beginning, a new normal, and rebuild your life, you need to make the decision to do it. But what we need to realize during this time, and this will be the last slide, what we need to learn during this time is we need the Lord. Could it be, I just lied to you because there's one other slide. Okay, could it be that one of the reasons why God permits us to suffer is to give us some wake-up calls? You need me. You really need me. Now, sometimes we can read that in a book, and book learning sometimes just isn't effective. But when you have what my daughter calls a come to Jesus meeting, some sort of something that you experience in your life, those who wait on the Lord, what's a waiter do? A waiter serves. You don't give up on the Lord. You don't turn your back on the Lord. You continue to lean hard on the Lord and keep serving Him. Those who wait on the Lord, what can happen to those people? They can renew their strength. They can even mount up with wings like eagles. They can run and not be weary and walk and not be faint. Where do you get the strength? From leaning hard on the Lord. And here is the last one. I promise you. I won't bring up another one. I love David's humble spirit. When my heart is overwhelmed. Now remember, he's the man after God's own heart. But even a man after God's own heart can be overwhelmed by his life experiences. And so he says, when my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that's higher than I. What we all need when we've suffered loss is we need the Lord. Could it be one of the reasons why he permits that to happen? Is to help us internalize what we know in our head, but haven't yet settled on deep in our heart. I need thee, oh, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. That is our best help, most effective help when we're struggling. Well, life, love, and loss. Tomorrow morning we're going to start out talking about what grief does to us. And I promise you tomorrow, my effort will be the same goal. I want you to come leaving thinking, this has been of value. This has helped. It's given me perspective. It's made me encouraged. And the point of these workshops is twofold. Educate and encourage. That's what I want to do. Educate people about the powerful impact of loss. Encourage those who are struggling with it. Let's pray. Father, thank you very much for this evening, and thank you for these people who have come out. They've dropped everything in their life, Father, and chose to come here. Father, bless them because of that choice. Give us all safety, Father. We don't want to take anything for granted. Give us safety to where we're going to be retiring for the evening. And thank you for this church opening its doors to provide this help to people who want to learn something about life, love, loss, and its impact. Thank you, Father, for every person who's in this room. We can't bring ourselves to thank you for our heartaches, for our losses, for our burdens, but we can thank you for how we can grow through those terrible storms in our life. Thank you for being with us as we struggle. It's in the name of Jesus that we pray. Amen. Those two ladies who have totally insignificant knowledge. Now, the rest of you can leave if you want to, but before you leave, let me share with you a few things in this box, because this is really cool. If you have a clothesline, who doesn't need these? Okay, now, what about Spam? There's a can of Spam here, too, okay? Now, let's see. Oh, have any of you ever been to Buc-ee's? I am a huge fan of Buc-ee's. Okay, Buc-ee is out there on the table, as a matter of fact. Here's some Beaver Buddies in here. Now, I'm telling you what, if you don't like fruitcake, this still might be of value. If you want to really up the side of the head of somebody, this is really good to do that, because this is heavy, but this is a fruitcake. And by the way, it is not expired. I just bought this a couple of days ago. Now, here's a bag of prunes, too, if you need some help along that line. Okay, so anyway, you two ladies, you come on up here and you dig into this box. You get anything out of this box that you would like. I get to take a picture of you, though. Hey, now, here's what I want you to do. Hey, here's your assignment. If you know of somebody who could benefit from this workshop, text them tonight or call them. Tell them that this is not doom and gloom and that they might actually benefit from it. But we just want to encourage people, because I know this is threatening to a lot of people. It makes them feel uncomfortable about this topic. So let them loosen up. Let them know that it's okay to come. Hey, you go right ahead.
I'm picking for her.
Oh, you're picking for her. Oh. Do you trust her?